All right, I am going to get this started. So I'd like to welcome everyone that's here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming to Real Abilities Toronto Film Festival. My name is Rachel Listener, and I am the Education Program Coordinator for the festival. And on behalf of RAF's presenting partner, the Miles Nadal JCC, I'm thrilled to welcome you to the 5th Annual Real Abilities Film Festival Toronto. We are so glad to be able to offer this festival online. Thank you to our sponsors, the Government of Canada, Government of Ontario, the P&L Odette Foundation, the Toronto Arts Council, Autism Ontario, and our media partners Accessible Media Inc. and AI Media. Real Abilities Film Festival Toronto's home base is Takaranto, in the Dish with One Spoon territory, a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. We acknowledge the diversity of the First Peoples of the area and honor them as stewards of this land, builders of communities, and shapers and keepers of culture. Wherever you are watching, take some time to consider the territory you are living on. We also encourage you to check out the work of and support our friends at Imaginative. Imaginative is the world's largest the world's largest presenter of Indigenous screen content. This event is co-presented by AMI, Accessible Media Inc. We thank them for being our community partners. Please note that CART and ASL are available for this event. And I am excited to welcome our guest, Simone Cupid. If you have any questions for Simone, please enter those in the chat. If you're having tech difficulties, you can troubleshoot with our staff in the chat or email inclusion@mnjcc.org. And on that note, I would like to say thank you again for coming, and thank you to Simone, and take it away.
Thank you, Rachel, and hi, everyone. Welcome to our seminar on making accessible media via description. If it's okay with everyone, for the actual presentation part, I'm going to turn off my camera because I find it to be a little distracting. But I'll turn it back on for the Q&A so that we can see each other, or you can see me when we're asking questions. Okay, so today we're talking about how to make accessible media via descriptions. DV, you might have heard it called audio description, described video, all these various things. Hold on one second. There we go. Okay. So as content producers, the very first thing that we need to combat when we're going to be speaking to a blind or low vision audience is the societal misconception. The misconception is that blind people do not access media. Media is comprised of many different things. It's TV, film, podcasts, billboards, social platforms, email, commercials, advertising. Today, we're specifically going to be talking about using description for broadcast purposes. we don't have time to cover all media, so we're specifically talking about film and television here today. So the societal misconception is that blind people do not access media. However, upon further investigation by Nielsen, it was discovered that 96% of adults who are blind or partially sighted do indeed watch TV to approximately an average of 4 hours a day. This is just slightly lower than your average sighted viewer. Now, this is just television we're talking about. So when you add in things like the billboard on the side of the highway and the screen of your iPhone, these are not included in these numbers. This is strictly television viewing. So 4 hours a day is on par with your average sighted viewer. So what is accessible media? Or in this case, specifically described video. All right, so described video is a service that was primarily, it was created to serve the blind and partially sighted audience to help them envision things that, because they lack the It is a service that makes the visual verbal. So as storytellers and media creators, we're making stories with pictures. Now, to make that an accessible project, we have to make those pictures verbal. We do this by leveraging our conversation, by leveraging our breaks in conversation, leveraging on-screen action, sounds, special effects, music, etc. So this is a very big task. Where does one begin? We're going to break this down. As it's commonly said, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, there's absolutely no way in description that you will have time for 1,000 words. You probably won't even have time for 10. So we have to break it down by relevance. What is the most relevant thing that you need to convey to your audience in the current frame that we're looking at? And we're going to go a little farther into these as we go through the presentation. If I were to take this exact moment in time, I would say this PowerPoint presentation is the focus and the most relevant thing that we're all looking at. And regardless of where we are in our homes or wherever we're located, that would be secondary information. The most relevant thing here right now is this presentation that we're looking at. Concise. How are we going to describe something that could take 1,000 words? How are we going to describe it in just a few? Get in, get out, and get back to our story, our project. We're going to talk a little bit more about this also. Accuracy. It's our audience is depending on us, the describer, to be their eyes. Therefore, it's a relationship that's based purely on trust, that I'm giving them the information they need and I'm giving them accurate information so that they can follow along with whatever we're watching. So accuracy entails a few different things, not only what kind of car you're driving or what kind of gun you're shooting, but also accuracy of intent, of what is being intended by the storyteller. And we will also talk a little bit more about this in a moment. Pace. So I like to give 3 examples when I'm talking about pace. As movie viewers, as sighted movie viewers, we would not watch a war scene, a love scene, and a family dinner scene with the same emotion. So for instance, a war scene is going to be high drama, probably very loud, lots of sound, lots of shrapnel, guts, gore. You're going to watch that with a level of intensity that was intended for that scene. Let's take a love scene. This is going to be exactly the opposite of a war scene. It's going to be slow, probably darker, much more quiet, long and drawn out, so that they can play up the sensuality of the actual scene. And then my 3rd example is a family dinner scene. Let's say it's just a family and they're talking to the kids after school. Perhaps this is just a moment of comedic relief, or just a little bit of a lighthearted moment on screen. All 3 of those scenes would be viewed by me as a viewer with a different intended emotion. So when I'm going to describe those 3 scenes to my non-sighted or my partially sighted audience, I'm also going to have to keep these emotions and this type of storytelling in mind, because I need to convey to them what was intended by the director or the producer. And subjective interpretation is avoided. Now, what does that mean? Subjective interpretation is expected of every director, producer, or content maker out there. They're telling you a story and they're hoping to provoke an interpretation in you of what the story is they're conveying. But it is not my job as the describer to tell you what my personal interpretation of this movie is or this story is. My job as the describer is to convey to you what I'm seeing on screen that leads me to believe that Steven Spielberg, the director of this movie, wants me to feel a certain way. And that's a very different thing, because in one aspect, I am watching the movie for my audience by coming in and telling you, feel sad here, or this person is feeling this way or looking that way. I am drawing the conclusion for my audience instead of giving them the visual overall elements of what I'm looking at on screen, so that they themselves can come to the interpretation that the director was hoping to create in you. And I hope that that's a clear difference. And if it's not, we can discuss some of these more at the end in our Q&A. But it is not my interpretation that's important, but the interpretation that's important. Okay, so let's break these down just a little bit farther. This part of the presentation is a little bit interactive. So anybody who wants to throw in their contributions can do so on the chat. And then I'll just read it out loud as I see them pop up. So anybody who wants to toss in their contribution, can you tell me what this is a picture of? Anything? Say answer. Okay, I can't actually hear anybody. So let's just continue. Okay, so for anybody who is not completely familiar with this image, this is a photo of Dorothy's ruby slippers from The Wizard of Oz. Very famous film, very iconic piece of filmography. Do you think, even if someone has never seen the color ruby, or any color for that matter, that it would be important to denote that these slippers are ruby red? Because this piece of filmography is so iconic, it will always, this prop will always be referred to as the ruby slippers. It will always be spoken about in those terms, the ruby slippers from The Wizard of Oz. So even if a viewer had never indeed seen the movie or ever experienced the color ruby, it would be very important in this instance to denote that these are the ruby slippers, because that is the exact name of them. That's the proper name of the prop, and it'll never be referred to as anything else but Dorothy's ruby slippers. Let's take this image. A stop sign. Does anybody think that it would be important to denote that this stop sign is red? So in this particular case, it would be irrelevant to have to point out that the stop sign is red, only because no matter which continent you go to on the planet or what country you go to, stop signs are red. It's a universal standard that globally you will see a red stop sign. So it is not necessary to pinpoint that that stop sign is red. It might be in this particular instance important to pinpoint that it's on the side of a school bus. And if that was important to the story, we would clarify that piece of information. But the fact that the stop sign is red is not a detail that we need to expand upon, because no matter where you go in the world, the stop sign will be red. So unless the stop sign is blue, that is not irrelevant. That is not necessarily a relevant description. I hope the difference there makes sense. And we could talk about this more during the Q&A. Rachel, are you seeing somebody asking a question? I'm not sure what's happening, so I'm going to continue. Is that okay? Okay. Let's continue. Okay. Next slide. Extra superfluous prolixity. Does anybody have any idea what this could possibly mean? No, I'm going to go with you don't know what it is. So it's really a long, fancy way of saying redundancy. So here's where we're going to get in a little bit more discussion about conciseness. I would like you to see if you can figure out what this particular phrase is trying to say. The jovial poking of fun is the burden of your personal being. Does anybody know what that says? If you said the joke's on you, then you're very smart, very clever. Basically, we can spend 9 words to say something that we can say in 4, but the general rule is it's better to say it in as few words as possible. Get across the piece of information you need to impart to your viewer, and then get out and let your story do its own talking. Don't cloud it all up with lots and lots of words to tell you one small little phrase. The jovial poking of fun is the burden of your personal being is really just saying the joke's on you. How about this one? It appears to be satisfactory from a good distance away, although greatly removed from all right. 14 words to say it looks good from far, but far from good. So again, as writers, we can sometimes fall into the trap of falling in love with our words and our prose, but it's always best practice to just keep everything to as few words as possible as the describer. Get in there, get out, and let your actual production tell its own story. It's not the describer's show. I am now not the star of the show. I'm simply in there to do a job, get that job done, and then remove myself from the production. Okay, accuracy and intent. As people, we do an awful lot of speaking with our body language, our bodies. Now, somebody who is low vision or blind does not have access to our body language. So how will we convey intent that is being displayed through our body language? Does the director, are they intending us to know that they are being sarcastic? Are they intending us to know that they're being literal? Or maybe this is an exaggeration? As a sighted viewer, and depending on what is being said orally at the same time, I'll be able to denote which of those things it is, whether they're being sarcastic, whether they're being literal. But if I'm having to rely on just seeing their body language, I would not know that they were telling me an extra part of the story unless they said, quote unquote, to indicate that they're being sarcastic in this particular segment. Or, when they're making they read a document this thick, perhaps that's exaggerative, or maybe it's actually literal. I don't know. But we would need to see what the this big is in order to get that part of Condoleezza Rice's story. Okay. So another way that as filmmakers and television makers, we tell stories is with a lot of different elements. So we will use a lot of different things on screen that aren't necessarily voiced, but still tell a story. So some of these are logos. We'll tell people who sponsored our big event via the logo. Where are we? An establishing shot. We've gone from one location in a movie to another location in the movie. It hasn't been orally said where we're going, but it's been set up for us on screen. That's telling a part of our story. Graphics. We see this all the time in newscasts and in weathercasts. As you can see behind me, it's going to rain in this part of the country. So when we're referring to things like graphs and other visuals that are on screen, we have to take those elements into consideration for somebody who's blind or low vision and may not be able to consume those visual elements. Another example would be subtitles. Somebody speaking in a foreign language, and we're going to subtitle it into English for them. Basic rule in this particular instance is allow the person who's speaking the foreign language to speak first. Allow them to establish their voice pattern and that they're speaking in another language. Then, as the describer, we would come in and read back the subtitles. That's the general rule, so that we establish that there is a speaker on screen that is not us, the describer, and then this is what that speaker is saying. Maybe it's a lower third. Hi, my name is Simone Cupid, and I'm a media accessibility specialist at AMI. That might be what my lower third says if I were on screen. So we have to take these types of things into consideration if our audience is not able to consume that lower third or that key. Coming up next, we're going to be joined by Professor Daniel Levitin, a neuroscientist from the University of McGill. As simple as that, so that when his actual identification comes up on screen, we've already given the information to our audience who can't see it visually. Maybe it's an on-screen note. It hasn't been said out loud, but it's an important part of the next piece of our story. He quickly jots down on a note, anniversary, Friday. Without that piece of information, perhaps I won't understand the next segment of the movie if I didn't see the note. And finally, things as simple as credits. Every show has credits and whatnot, and our audience is interested in who directed, who produced, who starred, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these things are elements that we're going to have to decipher and figure out how we're going to convey them to our audience who can't consume them visually. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about sound. I'm going to play a few sounds for you, and I just want you in your own dwelling to decide if you know what this sound is. So our first one. Not hearing it? Yeah? How about this one?
Simone,
Yes?
we're getting some messages saying that people are
People can't
unable
hear
to
it?
hear. If you're able to maybe turn up a little bit, I am hearing it, but we'll see if I can kind of enable that for everybody.
Okay, so how would I do that?
Just see if you can just turn the volume up a little bit for now. I'm going to see if there's a way we can publish it through.
Because we went through this the other day too. We were having problems hearing it.
Mm-hmm. We may need to just continue on past this section.
Okay. So. All right. So I'm very sorry to anybody who didn't hear that. These Zoom workshops are, they're, you know, you never know what kind of problems you're going to come up with. But anyways, okay. So we listened to 4 sounds there. First one, applause. It's a group of people clapping. Second one, oops, a telephone. If you didn't hear that, that one was a telephone, sorry. That one, a doorbell. And this last one, a car starting. Now, so the exercise here is, as sighted viewers, if you were not in the room to see the telephone ring, would you understand that a telephone was ringing? If you didn't see somebody get in a car and put the key in the ignition, would you understand that that's the sound of a car starting? These are common everyday sounds. They're not things that create confusion for the most part in and of themselves. So it isn't so important as a describer for me to describe that a telephone rang or to describe that a doorbell rang. That wouldn't be the important piece of information that I need to convey to my viewer. The important piece of the information that might be important is whose phone rang. Is it my phone that rang, my cell phone? Was it my office desk phone that rang? Was it my car trying to start? Who pulled the gun and who shot whom? So the important part isn't that a gun was shot, because that sound is very easily recognizable. The piece of the storytelling that will be missed is who shot the gun and who shot at whom. That's the piece that we need to fill in as the describer. And so we actually encourage you to use your sounds in your storytelling, use your music, use your special effects, use your common sounds to tell part of your story. And only if it's confusing, if there's a confusing element that is associated with that sound, that's the part that needs clarification. Okay, so where do we start when we are going to make a show? Very minute that you say, I've got a show and we're going to call it ABC. How do we start building in the accessibility of this project? It starts with your script writing. From the minute you sit down and you put words on paper, you should be building in your accessibility features. You should be building in your descriptive language and whatever it is you need to clarify as far as the elements we talked about, whether they're logos, graphics, body language. Those are things that you're going to need to figure out from the point of your script writing so you can cover them off from the get-go. It involves educating absolutely everybody who's going to be involved with that project. So if there's a host, if there's guests, if there's actors, I'm talking about the cameraman, I'm talking the sound guy, I'm talking the guy in the control room. Everybody who's going to be a part of this particular production has to have a basic information in accessibility and accessible media making, because only in that way will everybody be looking for the same end result. And can we do our very best to ensure nothing slips through the cracks as far as being accessible to somebody who doesn't have the privilege of sight. Everybody's looking for the same end result, and if one person misses something, hopefully with so many eyes on it, someone else will pick it up. Introducing speakers. So this gets really complicated and kind of tricky depending on how many speakers are on screen at a time. It's been researched, and the way that people who are blind and low vision associate your ID is generally with your voice pattern. So they would associate Simone Cupid speaking with my voice pattern. Now suppose I wasn't going to speak for 20 minutes. It wouldn't do my audience, my low vision audience, a service. It would do them a disservice to introduce me 20 minutes before I was about to speak, because they would have no way to identify me and to set up my voice pattern so that they can coordinate my image and that I'm speaking to them with the pattern of my voice. So if I'm going to speak in 10 minutes, it's probably better just to introduce me as I'm going to speak. So everyone else speak first, Kimberly, Ryan, Rachel, and next, here's Simone Cupid to discuss media accessibility. Then I will come in and I'll speak, and they know that I'm Simone Cupid. Planning text. This is a very common thing on television these days. 20 years ago, we didn't have things like websites and Twitter handles, hashtags, and all these types of things. We've always had things like titles and headlines, lower thirds, and credits. But now we're telling multiple pieces of story in one screen. We're trying to convey several different messages in the same moment. But For our audience, we're going to have to figure out how to break down these elements so that they can consume them and get the information that's required. So we have to plan for the text and all these different elements before the cameras roll, because once you're actually out and rolling film, it's too late to think about these different elements that we have to incorporate. Okay, moving on. Thinking accessibility in scene changes. Let's suppose we're doing a documentary on a hockey player. We show some action on the ice, some actual gameplay on the ice. After gameplay, we're going to move into the locker room because we're going to have a one-on-one interview with this star hockey player. How are we going to convey to our audience that we have moved from ice play to the locker room without having to say, okay, now in the locker room? So there's many different things that we can do. I mean, we can play up our sounds of slapsticks on ice and pucks skidding across the ice and lots of gameplay, and and then change it to maybe a different sound going into the locker room, just to draw people's attention and create the image that we've now moved locations. Whichever way we choose to do it as the producer or as the director, it's something that we'll need to think about before we actually roll our cameras, because our audience is relying on us to help them follow the story and where the story leads us. Portraying action. During that 3 minutes of the hockey game on ice, how will you convey what's going on ice? My audience can't see it, but you're showing them what the star hockey player can do. So you're going to have to think about how you're going to make that 3 minutes of story accessible to the person who can't see the game. Capturing B-roll. This is essential when you're making accessible media, because our B-roll essentially is, it adds to our storytelling. And there's a lot of our storytelling that's not pretty. Jump cuts, and we have to cover cuts and edits and whatnot. And that's what we use our B-roll for. B-roll is a necessary entity in media production. But we have to be very cognizant when capturing our B-roll that we're not telling our blind or low vision audience a separate or different story to the one that we're telling our sighted audience. And I'll give you an example. Excuse me. We watched a documentary that was based in Manhattan. It opened with the VO that said, "Amid the skyscrapers of Manhattan." Our B-roll showed an overview of the skyscrapers of Manhattan, New York. We didn't show Statue of Liberty. We didn't show Central Park. We didn't show Times Square. Now, all of those are still Manhattan, but our audience, when we said amid the skyscrapers of Manhattan, that's the image that we helped our blind, low vision audience draw in their head, create in their minds. That's the image we should show on screen, because to show the other images is giving superfluous story, but only to the audience that can see it. And therefore, we've sort of cut our target audience, our core audience, out of the equation. Think accessibility if you're going to be dealing with graphics. If you're telling the news and or the weather and you're using graphics behind you, it is okay to use graphics on screen. We just have to quantify them. If you take a look at the screen behind me, you will see on the West Coast in Vancouver, it's going to be rain, rain, rain. But as we move east across the country and we get to the East Coast, it's nothing but sunshine in Halifax. So you can say you're here and you're pointing and you're gesturing to the graphic behind you, but you're quantifying it orally, what you're pointing to, so that somebody who can't see the graphic is still getting the pertinent information. Am I being sarcastic? Oh my God, that was I can't really think of something sarcastic off the top of my head, but if I was trying to tell you something that I was intentionally being ridiculous or foolish, I would do air quotes. So for me to convey that to you, I would quote unquote say whatever it is I'm trying to be funny about. Okay, social media. Everybody has social media handles these days. So how do we give that piece of information to our audience who can't see it on the screen? Let's go through that. So for websites, the basic rule is you can leave out the www. It is never necessary to put it in. The internet will automatically put www in for you. The next best rule is to leave it at the tail, the .ca, .com, .org, .edu, whatever the tail end is, leave it there unless it's very, very, very simple extension. Because somebody who doesn't have like a pen and paper in their hand, it's going to be very difficult for them to record all that information. If you're saying, you know, please contact us at ami.ca_recipes/4senses, you know, /May 31st, 2019. That's just a lot of information for anybody, sighted, non-sighted, to be able to jot down and record in a short period of time. So the general rule is to leave it at the tail. Please visit us at ami.ca for more information on how to create accessible content. Calls to action. A lot of things we do and a lot of things we display are plays on words. So in order for our audience to understand play on words, we need to say it first, spell it second. So for more information, please contact us at onewithone.com. That's WON with ONE.com. So it's very clear to somebody that it's the one and the one are plays on words, and which one we're talking about, which comes first. All right, so a general overview of our best practices. Introduce guests as they appear. I'm Simone Cupid. I'm a media accessibility specialist from AMI, and today I'm going to spend a half an hour with you discussing the elements of making your media productions accessible. And for the next 20 minutes, Simone Cupid's going to speak. Ensure your interviews work for radio. Long ago, before the medium of television, there was only the medium of radio. Well, they used to actually tell stories on the radio without the advantage of having the picture. Orson Welles was very famous for doing these types of radio plays. If you can go back and try to recreate some of those old world radio plays that were made for the ear, on television, you'll still have your pictures, but if you can make your pictured story, if you can make it accessible orally, then you've got a very good accessible piece. Avoid gesturing. Take a look at this. As you can see, look at that. Oh my God, see over there? These are not things that can be done by my core audience. And be clear who is being addressed. Oftentimes in different shows, maybe panel style discussion shows, we will actually break the fourth wall of TV and we'll address our audience at home, but they won't know we're addressing them at home unless we are specific that they are the people we're addressing. So just be very clear who it is you're speaking to. So thank you, Kimberly and Ryan, for joining us today for our presentation, and thank you at home for tuning in. That way, our audience who can't see who you and you are knows who we're talking to. So, things to consider. These 6 words, this, that, here, there, see, and look. What do these 6 words have in common? If you said that they're not descriptive, you're right. Each one of these words is directive. They're telling you, they're giving you a piece of information to get you to do something else. See this? Take a look at that. Look over here. Let's go there. So we're adding a new element that requires another piece of information. If any of these 6 words ever comes up in any of your productions as an accessible media producer or describer, that's the indication that you are on the job. You have to fill in the blank of what this, that, here, there, what I'm looking at and what I'm seeing is. Okay, last but not least, it's really important, don't sacrifice your creative storytelling. We are still media makers, we're still filmmakers, we're still television producers. We want to tell stories that are compelling. We want to create content that is engaging. You don't want to have to dull things down or dumb them down or make them less engaging because you're trying to make them accessible. So if you just remember a few of the basics that we covered here and some of the elements that you have to be very cognizant of in keeping clear for your low vision audience, you can make as equally creative a story or a project as if it were for a fully sighted audience without having to sacrifice any of that creative juice. Okay, so that's it for the overview of our presentation. I do have a bit of an exercise that I'm happy to have everybody share in. So, who should I speak to about this? Jane?
Hi, Simone. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great. We actually have some questions as well. Would you like to do your activity first?
No, let's do the questions first because I want people to have their questions answered before I have them test, like do this little test with this little creative exercise I have.
Perfect. We have EM, How She Hustles. Hi, Simone. What advice do you have about how to make social media tools accessible like Instagram and Instagram Live?
When you say make the tools accessible, do you mean the actual app itself?
Yes.
Or content on the app?
It sounds like it.
Okay, that's a tech question. And I don't have the answer to how you would make the actual tools themselves accessible.
Does anyone else have any questions for Simone?
Sorry about that. I hate having no answer to your question. Anybody have any questions about actual production?
Hello?
Hello?
Hi. I actually have a bit of a technical answer to the question that was asked. If
Perfect.
you would like that.
That would be great. Who's speaking, sorry?
My name is Gabriel. I go by they, them pronouns.
Okay. Thanks for your help. That's great.
So there are ways of, let's say, making Instagram more site friendly. One of those ways is to switch on a button in your settings that allows for descriptive imaging. And so Instagram will make somewhat of a description or allow for descriptive readers to read that out. I'm not completely great on the other platforms, but for Instagram, that has been my answer. And a lot of
it's something you do in the settings, right?
Yes, it's something that you do in the settings, and as well of just including a picture ID at the end in a picture description instead of a video description at the end. And as a podcaster and somebody that uses social media a lot, that's how I've tried to make my social media more accessible to those with vision loss or low vision.
I know that our AMI website is accessible because we specifically made it accessible, but for other websites, I don't have the answer. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I only have the answer for Instagram, and if that helps somebody, I'm really happy then.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having this seminar. This is extremely helpful for me. Bye.
Great. Anything else? Anybody have any other questions on our presentation and on tackling making accessible media?
So Simone, we have another question from M, How She Hustles. How can we reach you, Simone? Do you have an Instagram handle or a Twitter or an email that you would feel comfortable passing around to people to get in touch?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll give you all of my contact information at the end, but I just wanted you to answer or ask any questions that you wanted about this presentation. And now I'm going to actually give you a little bit of an exercise for anybody who's willing to participate. Sound good? Okay. Here is, one second, let me get back to my presentation. Okay, here is an image. This image can tell you 100 different things depending on what you want your story to be. I want everybody who's interested in doing this exercise to write me as if this was a news story. I want you to write me a story that incorporates what is going on in this image as well as what the visual content of this image is. For somebody who could actually see the picture, you need to create the image for them surrounding a news story in 3 to 5 sentences. And then anybody who's interested can maybe share their news story with us. Does that sound like something anybody would want to try and do?
For sure. Should they be sharing it in the chat, Simone?
It depends on what you think is the easiest way to do it. It might be easier for them to just come on live and talk us through their news story, like present it to us.
That's easy enough to do. If somebody wants to share their story, they need only raise their hand by hitting the raise hand button in Zoom, and we can enable them to come online and speak.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is we're going to start the clock. I'm going to give you five minutes, more or less, to write down your 3 to 5 sentences. 5 minutes seems like a long time, but when you're trying to put a picture into words, believe me, it's going to take you some time. If it doesn't take the entire 5 minutes, you can just let Jane know, and she'll let me know that we're ready to take a couple of examples. So go ahead, write me your 3 to 5 sentence, 1 minute news story around this particular image. Jane?
Yes.
How many people do we have?
So let me check our chat. Has anyone raised their hand to participate in the activity? Oh, we have one in the chat. Can you
That's
see the chat, Simone, or would you like me to read it out loud?
I would like you to read it out because I can't access it because it covers my screen. chat.
For sure. Okay, so here we go from Jennifer Polk.
Okay,
Thanks, Jennifer. Two firefighters stand in front of a raging fire. It looks like they are shining a powerful light at a bush, turning it red in the darkness. It is either nighttime or the sky is so filled with smoke that the background is dark. Bushes and trees are on fire and fill the photo.
Oh, that's very good. Nice, Jennifer. So if I didn't see this photo, or anybody else, if you didn't have the advantage of seeing this photo, is there anything to Jennifer's description that you feel she maybe missed or you would like to add to enhance it anymore? No, I thought that was actually pretty good, Jennifer. So I got the idea that we're standing in front of lots of burning bushes and that for sure that there's two firemen. I got that, and that the air is very black and smoky and cloudy. So that's great. Good job. Anybody else have one?
Okay, everyone, last call to submit your answers. Okay, so it seems like we don't have anyone right now that has their hand raised or submitted to the chat. So looks like you're good to continue, Simone.
Okay, so that was just an exercise to sort of get your creative juices flowing and to get you thinking descriptively, because we will have lots of information in front of us that we need to impart to our audience. And of course, the information is the important part of our story, but the image that we're showing that accompanies our story is equally important. And so this was an exercise to try and get your brain to incorporate those two pieces or those two elements of a story, your visual and your oral storytelling, in order to create as much of an accessible piece as possible. All right, so that is our presentation for today. And if anybody has any further questions or has a question that they didn't think of right now and they would like to pose it later, or they're working on a project and they come up against a challenge. If you'd like to contact me, you can contact me at simone.cupid@ami.ca, simone.cupid@ami.ca. And for more information on making accessible media and for a copy of our described best practices guide, you can visit our website, ami.ca/DV or /IDV for more information on that.
Hi, everyone. This is Rachel again.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi, sorry about my lighting. I just wanted to say thank you to Simone for such a wonderful presentation, and thank you to all of the people that came to participate with us. We also want to apologize for our own technological difficulties at the start, and thank you for sticking with us to stay through the end of the presentation. Just a friendly reminder, our festival is on until Sunday, and you can check out the full program at www.realabilities.org/Toronto, and you can catch the whole program there, and make sure to sign up for all of the tickets through Eventbrite. And on that note, I'm going to say thanks again and enjoy the beautiful day, and we hope to see you at our next program tonight at 7 p.m.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Kimberly.